Momentum is building and officials are talking as the world waits for a ceasefire and hostage deal to break between Israel and Hamas. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is now saying opportunities have opened up to free the hostages. And what his critics are saying, the Prime Minister is now seeking the release of the hostages before his other military objectives in Gaza. Could the 50 hostages held by terror groups in the Gaza Strip be released soon? Here's what else you need to know.
New opportunities are rising after the ceasefire deal with Iran was established. While meeting officials at a Shin Bet facility in the south of Israel, the Prime Minister said first and foremost to rescue the hostages, and then going on to say to resolve the issue in Gaza and to defeat Hamas.
אני רוצה לבשר לכם שנפתחו, כפי שאתם בוודאי יודעים, נפתחו הרבה הזדמנויות עכשיו, בעקבות הניצחון הזה, הרבה מאוד הזדמנויות. קודם כל לחלץ את החטופים, כמובן שאנחנו נצטרך לפתור גם את עניין עזה, להכריע את החמאס, אבל אני מעריך שאנחנו נשיג את שתי המשימות. אבל מעבר לזה נפתחות אפשרויות אזוריות רחבות, שבחלק מהם, בעצם כמעט בכולם אתם שותפים.
Netanyahu's critics say it's the first time since October 7th the Prime Minister placed the release of the hostages as the government's top priority above the defeat of Hamas. As momentum and pressure continues to grow for a ceasefire and hostage deal, Netanyahu used the word, quote, rescue instead of the word, quote, release while speaking about the hostages. The Hostages Family Forum says, quote, the families of the hostages welcomes the fact that after 20 months, the return of the hostages has finally been designated as the top priority by the Prime Minister. Meanwhile, their statement goes on to say, quote, it is crucial to emphasize that what is needed is release, not rescue. The difference of one word would mean the difference between salvation and loss for the hostages. The families of hostages have long warned and feared that any military action to rescue living hostages could result in their deaths. Netanyahu's comments come after President Trump made remarks a ceasefire deal could come within weeks, and after Trump took to Truth Social to say, quote, make the deal in Gaza, get the hostages back. As Israel pushes for the dismantling and disarming of Hamas in the Gaza Strip during negotiations, the terror group continues to push back from recent negotiations, despite officials saying Hamas is weakened, although they still rule parts of the Gaza Strip.
And the Prime Minister, Defense Minister, and IDF Chief of Staff held high-level discussions to consider the next steps in the war in Gaza. The Army indicated that it's fulfilled its missions and awaits new orders to fully conquer Gaza amid a potential ceasefire agreement. It's day 632 of the war in Gaza, and ILTV's Steve Leibowitz has the latest.
A soldier killed in action yesterday in Gaza was laid to rest. 20-year-old Sergeant Yisrael Natan Rosenfeld, age 20, was killed by an explosive device during fighting in northern Gaza. Rosenfeld from Ra'anana served in the Combat Engineering Battalion. He was the 20th soldier killed in fighting since the start of the month. The fallen soldier was from a family of immigrants from London. Prime Minister Netanyahu and Defense Minister Katz and IDF Chief Eyal Zamir held high-level discussions yesterday to evaluate the next steps in Gaza that could include a potential move toward wider military operation if the hostage negotiations fail to result in a breakthrough to end or pause the war in Gaza. Within the IDF, there's an ongoing debate about whether to press forward in Gaza or declare that the war's main objectives were achieved, including the destruction of Hamas military infrastructure and senior commanders, the dismantling of tunnels and weapon systems, and the seizure of over half of the territory. Meanwhile, the IDF has ordered Palestinians to evacuate areas of northern Gaza, expecting intensified fighting with Hamas. Following new evacuation orders, thousands of Palestinians from northern Gaza and Jabalia are moving toward the Sheikh Radwan area. The army has intensified bombardments in the area with reports of civilians being killed near Mawasi. The military escalation comes as Arab mediators from Egypt and Qatar, backed by the U.S., are continuing efforts to reach another ceasefire for hostage deal. The agreement could secure the release of the remaining Israeli hostages, living and dead, and potentially bring an end to the war in Gaza.
Thank you, Steve, for that report. And joining us now is Joe Trusman, a senior researcher, analyst, and editor at FDDS's Long War Journal. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, we heard these brand new comments from Netanyahu overnight, specifically talking about rescuing the hostages. Tell me what you think this means. And do you think he's being realistic? Could these hostages potentially be rescued?
Right. There's always the potential for hostages to be rescued. I think, though, over the last few months, at least since earlier this year when the ceasefire collapsed, we've observed the IDF rescue, at least recover the bodies of hostages. However, we haven't seen any of them rescued alive. And I think that's paramount here is to rescue these hostages alive, at least the ones that are still in Gaza. So I think this is important. I'm not sure if it's going to happen with the current strategy that the IDF has, that the IDF is employing. It may have reached its limits already. So I think a ceasefire may be the best option here for Israel to get at least the live hostages back, and of course, recover the bodies of the other hostages.
But is that ceasefire deal realistic, in your opinion? Do you feel like this momentum that everyone keeps talking about from the Iran and Israel ceasefire, that momentum could be now shifted to this part of the region, and a ceasefire and a hostage deal could be reached in the near future?
I mean, I think the problem here is that there are certain obstacles that have impeded a ceasefire deal for many months now. And I think those obstacles is that, specifically, one of the obstacles is that whether Hamas stays in power or not. All right. I think this is obviously something that Israel does not want. And conversely, Hamas wants to stay in power. But so these are very difficult questions that need to be answered. And I think both sides, Hamas and Israel, will have to give some leeway here with their demands if they want a ceasefire. But I think time is against both Hamas and Israel right now, considering all the factors that are involved here. So, I think it is possible, but we have to be careful here. We've seen ceasefire deals almost be achieved in the last more than a year and a half. But, obviously we know only a couple of them have lasted for so long. So we'll have to wait and see.
I know, and we have to remember the toll it takes on these families that have been waiting almost 2 years at this point to get their loved ones back. These conversations, of officials saying there's optimism and then things don't come to fruition. It's a painful game that they're stuck in, and it's a very unfair system that they have to deal with. Tell me why you think there's so much pressure from President Donald Trump at this point in time to get a deal reached.
Right. I mean, as you said, it's almost been 2 years of war. I think there are also other factors, specifically Israel normalizing relations, ties with countries in the region. And I think President Trump wants that to advance. And what's impeding that is the war in Gaza. Mm-hmm. All right. I think that's why we're starting to see more pressure on Israel here to get a ceasefire deal, as we saw with the recent post by President Trump. So, but I think it has a lot to do with the advancing normalization with countries in the region.
Right, and we just heard in an interview yesterday from President Donald Trump that there could be even more countries that are interested in joining the Abraham Accords. Tell me, do you think Israel has accomplished their war objectives inside of Gaza?
I think they've gone much farther than I expected. Started tracking this war, obviously, since more than a year and a half ago. And to be quite honest, I didn't expect the successes that they've had so far. Yahya Sinwar's dead. Many of his lieutenants are dead. Obviously, his brother's been eliminated recently. So Hamas is severely degraded. Severely, all right. They're still operating, but they aren't what they were pre-October 7th, and that's I think that's a success for the Israelis, to be quite honest with you. Whether Hamas stays in power after this is over, that's another question. And this may be a sacrifice that Israel has to make to get the hostages back. That is, of course, to leave Hamas in power, unfortunately, in the Gaza Strip.
Right, and we know that Israel is saying they're still hitting specific infrastructure sites inside of Gaza as well. And we actually know just from yesterday, I believe, that the IDF actually managed to eliminate one of the founders of Hamas. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's one of the reports that actually came in, as they are still continuing to target very specific people inside of the Gaza Strip. Any take on that? I know we're a little bit short on time, but quick take.
Right. So, yeah, listen, Israel's been doing a great job degrading Hamas's infrastructure, eliminating personnel, as you mentioned. So this is an important achievement. So Hamas is beat now. However, they're not completely down. Nevertheless, I think the IDF's current strategy has hit its limit. So now Israel has to decide: do we want a ceasefire or do we want to keep going?
Thank you so much, Joe, for joining us in this conversation. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And there are reports in the Arabic media speculating that there could soon be a meeting held between Prime Minister Netanyahu and the new Syrian leader, with the goal of normalizing relations between countries at war since Israel's creation. Here's more with ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
Jerusalem and Damascus have both confirmed ongoing indirect contacts with U.S. backing. There are reports of a possible meeting between Prime Minister Netanyahu and Syrian leader al-Shara. After a positive meeting with President Trump last month and the U.S. lifting of sanctions, Damascus is reportedly pushing for a potential Israel-Syria agreement. The potential deal envisions IDF withdrawal from the Syrian Golan occupied after al-Shara ousted former Syrian President al-Assad. It also calls for the creation of a new, revised buffer zone agreement. Sources close to the Damascus government are quoted saying that mediated talks are underway with regional and international backing. Syria reportedly demands an end to Israeli attacks and incursions into its territory and a return to the 1974 disengagement agreement. Syria is not demanding that Israel withdraw from the Israeli Golan to the pre-1973 border. Israel reportedly agrees to establish a new buffer zone and a security deal with Syria, paving the way for a future comprehensive peace. The deal would replace the UN-monitored buffer zone UNDORF created after the 1973 Yom Kippur War. The sources ruled out an immediate permanent agreement, but left room for a framework leading to Syria's eventual entry into the Abraham Accords. Meanwhile, the IDF keeps operating in the Syrian Golan. The 210th Bashan Division this week arrested several suspected terrorists. The army said that while conducting raids on weapons caches, they arrested a number of terrorist suspects. The army said its mission is neutralizing any threat to Israeli civilians, especially those living on the Golan Heights. Following the collapse of the al-Assad regime in December, Israel took control of a portion of the Syrian side of the Golan Heights. The move was aimed at creating a security buffer to protect Israeli territory from hostile elements operating in the Syrian power vacuum.
Thanks so much, Steve, for that report. And joining us now to discuss all of this news is Rawan Osman, a Syrian-Lebanese peace activist. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. First off, tell me what you think about this potential news that these two leaders could speak. Of course, it would be very historic for the region.
Since the fall of Assad, I did say on Israeli TV repeatedly that Syria will be next to join the Abraham Accords, even before Lebanon, because I see the move, how swiftly the rebels and the jihadists got rid or overthrew Bashar al-Assad told me that this was a coordinated regional decision to close the corridor between Iran and Hezbollah. What happened is brilliant. I'm not saying trust al-Shara. I do not trust him. He is a former Qaeda member, and his entourage are mostly former jihadists. But at the moment, they are the best we have, and they have other jihadists under control. Of course, these are historical moments, especially that it's very unusual for an Arab leader to speak positively about Israel. This is the importance of what is happening. And I'm happy that Israel did not welcome the gestures with open arms. I mean by that, you cannot let a terrorist in your backyard. Israel has enough to worry about at the moment, but they signaled openness. And I trust that the Israelis are intelligent enough to refuse to simply going back to the 1974 disengagement agreement. This is our opportunity to bring Syria and Lebanon into the Abraham Accords alliance, and nothing short of that is acceptable. But let's do it carefully.
Let me ask you.
The biggest challenge.
Go ahead, keep going.
The biggest challenge Ashara faces now is remaining alive. He needs to try and avoid assassination attempts. It happened already, but I believe with the Americans speaking about him positively, that their intelligence securities or forces or personnel on the ground or outside will help him survive this phase. And maybe we will see a peace agreement, a comprehensive peace agreement in the next year or two.
Do people inside of Syria and Lebanon, would they want their countries to join the Abraham Accords? Is that something that people talk about in these societies?
Definitely. You would be surprised. Lebanese and Syrians living abroad care less for peace, but those who live on the ground, those who face the consequences of the recklessness of the so-called axis of resistance, those who live in failed economies, those young men who were left with nothing but joining a jihadist organization because the world gave up on them. And we just accepted that Assad will live forever, just like many Iranians think Khamenei will live forever. Things are changing rapidly. Those on the ground are speaking in favor for a peace agreement with Israel. And if you ask, especially, I have access to that on social media. When I ask people, my followers, and they reply in the comments, would you like to see Damascus resembling Gaza or Dubai? And I ask the Lebanese, why are you so desperate to get a visa to go work in Abu Dhabi when Beirut could become even better? And you'd be surprised, the general mood is in favor.
Right. And I want to ask you, do you think there could be working relations between Israel and Syria in the near future? If so, what would those ties potentially look like?
I think those who paved the way for that to happen were the beautiful Druze communities. They were brave enough to cross the borders, to ignore the nonsensical imposed anti-normalization laws, because they have family members on the other side of the border. This could be the model. We can start with a community that we know will never stab us in the back. Slowly, maybe we can expand that, but as a trade partner, Syria would be brilliant, and Syria is in desperate need for collaboration with the Israelis, for the innovation, for the model Israel is in the region.
Right. Wow. A fascinating point about the Druze. So many Druze people have actually told me in the past they believe that they can be the keys to peace in the Middle East because they know what it takes to work both sides, be part of these different communities, and their families still live on different sides of the borders, and they still hold their traditions and culture so close to them. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
And violence in Judea and Samaria is once again making headlines, this time not between Israelis and Palestinians, but between extremist and Jewish residents and Israeli soldiers. ILTV's Rawan Osman has the full story.
Tensions in Judea and Samaria reached a boiling point over the weekend, culminating in violent clashes between a fringe group of settlers and Israeli security forces. The violence began Wednesday in the Palestinian village of Kfar Malik, when dozens of Jewish residents of the area reportedly rampaged through the area. 3 Palestinians were killed, 7 were injured, and property was torched. The IDF said it responded to armed fire from Palestinian gunmen. Then, on Friday night, tensions escalated again. According to the military, a group of Judea and Samaria residents returned to Kfar Malik and were met by IDF forces trying to prevent further violence. What followed was a rare confrontation between settlers and soldiers. Troops were attacked with stones. 1 battalion commander was beaten. Vehicles were vandalized. 6 suspects were arrested. A 14-year-old settler was shot and wounded. The IDF said an officer had fired into the air in accordance with protocol, unaware the stone throwers were masked Jewish teens. The incident sparked outrage throughout Judea and Samaria. Hundreds protested outside the Binyamin Brigade's headquarters on Sunday night, accusing the military of excessive force. Several Israeli citizens vandalized and set fire to the security installation used to help prevent terrorist attacks in the Binyamin Brigade area. The IDF confirmed the incident on Monday, calling the damage a threat to civilian safety and vowing to hold those responsible accountable. But leaders across the political spectrum, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Defense Minister Israel Katz, and the IDF Chief of Staff, Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir, issued strong condemnations. All emphasized violence against IDF soldiers will not be tolerated. This is a small minority, Netanyahu stressed in a statement. They do not represent the vast majority of settlers who are law-abiding citizens and serve proudly in the IDF, the Prime Minister said. The Yesha Council echoed that message. Regional leader Israel Gantz met with rabbis and local heads across Judea and Samaria, who denounced the violence and called for those responsible to face justice. The IDF continues its investigation, including a ballistic review to determine who fired the bullet that wounded the teen. Meanwhile, authorities say the violence must stop for the safety of soldiers, civilians, and the stability of the region.
Thanks, Mayan, for that detailed report. And now, do you want to transform your love for Israel into meaningful action? ILTV is proud to partner with Blessed by Israel, a company that brings you extraordinary products handcrafted by the brave pioneers of Judea and Samaria. Every purchase supports their mission and strengthens Israel's heartland. Let's take a closer look at Blessed by Israel and how you can make a difference today.
As the world moves to boycott Israel, the people working to restore life to the biblical heartland face daily challenges. Blessed by Israel offers a simple way to support these efforts by bringing unique and beautiful products from Judea and Samaria directly to you. From the hilltops of God's land to your home, you can find exceptional items crafted by families and small businesses in the heart of Israel. With U.S.-based warehouses, Blessed by Israel ensures affordable prices and fast delivery. Choose from a range of products, including skincare, artisan flowers and foods, olive oil, tahini, honey, and much more. There are many great options for giving wonderful gifts to your loved ones. Visit blessedbyisrael.com to explore these products and discover the inspiring stories behind them. Scan the QR code on your screen to take part in fulfilling God's prophecies.
Police say they are now looking into the anti-Israel chants by performers Bob Vylan and Kneecap at this year's Glastonberry Festival, which was broadcasted on the BBC and said to have been heard and seen by tens of thousands of people, many of them who joined in on the chants.
Death, death to the IDF! Death, death to the IDF! Death, death to the IDF!
You're listening right now to those chants, quote, death to the IDF. Bob Vylan is chanting there. The police say, quote, it raises serious concerns about the normalization of extremist language and the glorification of violence. The Israeli embassy in the UK also said they were deeply disturbed, calling the chants and actions by the performers inflammatory and hateful. And the Glastonberry Festival also said in a statement they were appalled by Vylan's remarks, saying there was no place at the festival for anti-Semitism, hate speech, or incitement to violence. Members of the Irish group Kneecap also chanted Free Palestine. Just recently, a member of one of their group was actually charged with a terror offense for displaying the Hezbollah flag, which is an Iranian-backed terror organization based in Lebanon. And let's take a look at the weather forecast. Cloudy skies are expected around most of the country tonight, with temperatures reaching lows of 23 degrees Celsius or 73 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow we'll see sunny skies alongside hot temperatures, seeing highs of 34 degrees Celsius or 73 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all of your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channels and our new live channel. You can catch us on Screen IL with 24/7 live coverage. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Shush Bedrosian. Thanks so much for watching.